Carmen Iglesias, we need you right now. Step away from the workstation.
Wait, you're serious? What crime? What are you even talking about? I've got 14 app cases open right now. I don't know what you think.
Carmen Iglesias operated without real supervision for 4 years as a social worker for Lansford County. Dozens of people depended on the system she controlled. No one verified anything.
Dozens of phantom clients, the same bank accounts, the same contact numbers, $590,000 in county funds.
The two investigators standing behind her had spent 11 months building the case before they ever walked into that office. Carmen Iglesias did not know that. She knew only that the data matching audit had flagged something, and she had spent the last 40 minutes trying to talk her way around it. She would not get the chance to finish. Within 72 hours, agents from the Texas State Auditor's Office would seize her workstation, her case files, and the bank records for 6 accounts she had opened across 3 institutions. Over 4 years. Dozens of clients who existed only on paper. $590,000 in public aid funneled to a woman who was supposed to be the gatekeeper. The county had trusted her with the names of the poor. She had invented them instead. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. When was the last time you thought about the people who decide whether your neighbors get help paying rent, or buying formula, or keeping the lights on? Most folks never think about caseworkers at all. Drop a comment and tell me whether you've ever interacted with a county social services office, good experience or bad. I want to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now. This channel covers the people who exploit the systems built to catch the rest of us, and we cover one every single week. Carmen Ramos was born in 1985 in Brownsville, Texas, the second of 4 children in a household where bilingual paperwork was a weekly chore. Her father, Esteban Ramos, drove a refrigerated produce truck for a regional grocery distributor. Her mother, Lucinda, cleaned hotel rooms at a coastal resort 43 miles up the highway and brought home a thin manila folder every quarter containing utility statements, school enrollment forms, and food assistance recertifications that needed to be translated, signed, and mailed back. Carmen was the one who translated them. She was 9 years old the first time she filled out a SNAP recertification on her mother's behalf. That detail mattered. The people who knew her would remember it later, because it was the through line her defense attorney would try to use at trial. The girl who grew up filling out aid forms for her own family became the woman who filled out aid forms for invented ones. She graduated from Pace High School in the spring of 2003 with a 3.4 GPA and a partial scholarship to the local community college. She worked the deli counter at an H-E-B on Boca Chica Boulevard for 2.5 years while she earned her associate's degree, and she transferred in the fall of 2005 to what was then the University of Texas Pan American in Edinburgh. She declared a social work major her first semester. Her academic advisor wrote in a transfer evaluation that Carmen was, quote, mature, deliberate, and unusually comfortable with the bureaucratic dimensions of the profession, end quote. He meant it as a compliment. Carmen earned her bachelor's degree in social work in May of 2008, married Mateo Iglesias 2 months later at a small civil ceremony at the Cameron County Courthouse, and moved with him 190 miles north when he was hired as a maintenance supervisor at a poultry processing plant in Lansford County in late 2009. Their daughter Esmeralda was born in March of 2011. Their son Joaquin followed in November of 2013. Carmen applied for a caseworker I position with the Lansford County Department of Health and Human Services in February of 2014 and was hired 5 weeks later at a starting salary of $36,400. Her first supervisor, a 31-year veteran named Helen Vasquez, wrote in her 6-month evaluation that Carmen was, quote, conscientious, organized, and willing to carry an above-average caseload without complaint, end quote. That last phrase would appear, almost verbatim, in 3 subsequent annual reviews. Willing to carry an above-average caseload, reliable under volume, does not flag overflow. By 2018, Carmen had been promoted twice. She was a caseworker the third, certified for eligibility determinations, and her active caseload was running between 240 and 270 open files at any given moment. The departmental guideline, written into a 2011 administrative memo that nobody enforced, was 120. Nobody asked how she was keeping up. Helen Vasquez had retired. The director's office cycled through 3 different appointees in 5 years. The audit team was understaffed by half. And Carmen, the conscientious one, the one who never complained, kept clearing files. Lansford County serves a population of just under 190,000 residents across a geography roughly the size of Rhode Island. The Department of Health and Human Services administers 14 separate programs ranging from emergency rental assistance to in-home elder care subsidies to a state-funded supplemental aid line for working poor families with children under 5. The department's annual operating budget the year Carmen was hired was $11.3 million. By 2023, it had grown to $14.8 million, but the number of caseworkers had increased by exactly 2 positions over that same 9-year stretch. The process, in theory, runs in 3 stages. Intake, which is supposed to involve an in-person interview and document verification. Eligibility determination, which is a paper review against state and federal criteria. And payment authorization, which releases county funds to either the client directly, a third-party service provider, or both. A caseworker at Carmen's grade level was authorized to handle all 3 stages for any single case. There was no built-in second set of eyes requirement. The supervisor signature line on the eligibility form was, by 2018, almost universally being initialed by whichever caseworker the 3 happened to have a free minute, including the originating caseworker herself. The trust framework was explicit. The state expected the county to verify. The county expected the caseworkers to verify. The caseworkers expected the audit team to verify. And the audit team, which had 4 positions when Carmen started and 3 when she stopped, expected the system to be too small to game. There was one more weakness, and it was the one Carmen would exploit. The state's eligibility database, which Lansford County had been forced onto in 2017 during a regional consolidation, did not cross-reference against any other government dataset in real time. A caseworker could open a new file in the morning, certify a client for emergency assistance by lunch, and authorize payment by close of business without a single automated check, confirming that the named individual existed in any other state record. Birth records, school enrollment, SNAP, Medicaid, vehicle registration, none of it talked to the aid database. The quarterly data matching audit was the only mechanism that could catch the gap, and it was understaffed, behind schedule, and not actually run quarterly. From 2018 to 2022, it ran twice. Therefore, Carmen had 4 years of unchecked authority over a payment pipeline that nobody was watching. The first phantom client opened in Carmen's caseload on the morning of October 14, 2019. Her name, on paper, was Dolores Marisol Hinojos. Her stated address was a real one. Apartment 4B at the Cedar Run Townhomes on Westview Drive, a 60-unit subsidized complex 3 miles from the HHS field office. Carmen had certified 8 legitimate clients at that complex over the previous 5 years. She knew the manager. She knew which apartments turned over often enough that no one would notice an extra name. Dolores Hinojos was certified eligible for emergency rental assistance under the Working Parents Supplemental Program on the same day her file was opened. Her aid was authorized at $476 per month. The first payment was direct deposited to a First Heritage Bank of South Texas checking account, ending in 4429 on November 1, 2019. That account had been opened 10 days earlier by Carmen Iglesias, using her real driver's license and a forged power of attorney document naming her as the authorized financial representative for Dolores Hinojos. For the first 6 months, Dolores was the only phantom. Carmen wanted to see whether the payments would clear, whether anything would flag, whether anyone at the bank or the county would ask. Nothing did. Therefore, she opened the second file. Gabriel Antonio Salgado entered the system on April 22, 2020. Then Yesenia Carmona on June 9th. Then a husband and wife pair named Eduardo and Maricela Quezada on August 17th. By the end of 2020, Carmen had 11 active phantom clients drawing aid through her caseload every single payment routed to one of 3 bank accounts she had personally opened. The method was clinical. Each file used a real address pulled from a legitimate client's intake form, often a multi-unit apartment complex where mail to a wrong apartment number would simply be returned or discarded. Each file used a fabricated Social Security number that Carmen had generated using a public sequencing pattern from the pre-2011 SSA issuance schema. Each file referenced a real employer, usually one of the 4 big agricultural processors in the county, with an entirely invented job title and pay stub forged from a template Carmen kept in a password-protected folder on her work laptop. Each phantom received an initial certification for between $400 and $700 per month in aid, never enough to trigger a supervisory flag, never enough to require additional documentation under the 2017 administrative threshold rule. She escalated slowly. In 2021, she opened 9 new phantom files. In 2022, 14. By the spring of 2023, she was running 31 active fictitious clients alongside her real caseload of 258 legitimate ones. The aid payments to her controlled accounts averaged just under $13,000 a month at the peak. The signs were there. Carmen and Mateo paid off the last $14,000 on the Honda Civic in a single lump sum payment in February of 2022. They installed a 6-foot privacy fence around the backyard of the modest 3-bedroom on Camellia Street that summer. Carmen replaced the central air conditioning unit in October. None of these were extravagant purchases. None of them were enough, on their own, to draw attention. But together, they described a household running about $2,000 a month above the family's documented after-tax income, and nobody was looking. Her co-worker, Rebecca Soriano, would say later, in a recorded statement, that she had once asked Carmen, half joking, whether Mateo had gotten a raise. Carmen had laughed and said her mother sent money when she could. Rebecca did not press, but she remembered it. The Texas State Auditor's Office runs a regional data matching protocol every odd-numbered fiscal year. Lansford County was on the schedule for the spring 2023 cycle. The protocol cross-references active aid recipients against 12 other state and federal data sets, including Medicaid enrollment, public school registration, vehicle registration, and Department of Public Safety identification records. The match is not real-time. It is a forensic sweep, run by a small team out of Austin, against a frozen dataset. The Lansford County file landed on the desk of a senior auditor named Marlene Tyndale on March 6, 2023. Tyndale had been with the state auditor's office for 22 years. She had run roughly 40 of these regional sweeps in her career. The Lansford file kicked back an anomaly cluster on her first pass. 41 active aid recipients in the Lansford County system shared the same 5 contact phone numbers in a rotating pattern. 29 of those 41 recipients had bank deposit instructions pointing to one of 3 checking accounts at the same regional bank. None of those 41 recipients appeared in the Texas Medicaid database. None of them appeared in any K-12 school enrollment record. None of them had a Texas driver's license or state ID, and every single one of them had been opened and certified by the same caseworker. Marlene Tyndale did not call the county. She called the Texas State Auditor's Investigative Division. By March 14th, a preliminary investigation had been opened. By April 3rd, the state auditor's office had pulled bank records under administrative subpoena. By May 22nd, they had matched the deposit accounts back to a single-named beneficiary, Carmen Iglesias. From May until the end of February the following year, 11 months total, investigators built the case while Carmen continued to come to work, continued to certify aid, continued to deposit the payments. They watched her open 4 additional phantom files during that window. They watched her authorize an additional $38,400 in payments. They did not move on her because every additional certified file was another count. Meanwhile, her actual life kept moving forward. Esmeralda turned 12 and started middle school. Joaquin played in his first organized baseball league. Carmen and Mateo took the kids to the Texas State Aquarium in Corpus Christi over Labor Day weekend. Carmen's mother flew up from Brownsville for Thanksgiving and stayed through Christmas. Carmen volunteered to coordinate the office's holiday food drive for low-income clients in December and personally delivered grocery bags to 7 legitimate families. She also opened 2 more phantom files in January. By the time the state auditor's investigative team was ready to present, they had assembled a case that would take the jury less than 4 hours to deliberate. They had bank records for 6 separate accounts, 3 at First Heritage Bank of South Texas, 2 at Lansford Federal Credit Union, and 1 at a national online bank, every account opened in person or remotely by Carmen Iglesias using her real driver's license and her real Social Security number. Total deposits across the 4-year period: $592,418.16. They had digital forensics from her county-issued laptop. A password-protected folder titled, with grim irony, Resources contained 47 different pay stub templates, pre-formatted with the logos of real Lansford County employers. The folder also contained a single spreadsheet, last modified February 11, 2024, listing every phantom client by name, the bank account each was routed to, the monthly aid amount, and a running total. Carmen had been keeping her own books. They had text messages between Carmen and Mateo. The messages did not implicate him. He appeared to have no idea what she was doing, but several were unintentionally damning on her end. Carmen, June 14, 2022. Deposit cleared. Told you it would. Stop worrying about the kitchen. Mateo. I'm just saying we could wait till next year. Carmen. We have the money. We have the money. Just let me handle it. Another exchange, from August of 2023, came after Mateo asked why her work email had pinged 3 times during dinner. Carmen. Research due tomorrow, normal stuff. Mateo. You always say that. Carmen. Because it's always true, babe. It was not always true. The pings that night were a payment confirmation, a system-generated reminder about a phantom file approaching its quarterly review window, and a routine departmental memo. They had Rebecca Soriano's recorded statement. She had agreed to cooperate without hesitation. Her statement covered 5 years of small observations. The casual offhand comment about Mateo's raise. The afternoon Carmen had stayed 3 hours late to, in her own words, clean up some files. The strange moment in 2022 when Carmen had asked Rebecca how to remove a metadata trail from a Word document. They had the physical evidence pulled from a search of Carmen's home, executed under warrant on the morning of March 4, 2024. In a fireproof document box in the back of the bedroom closet, agents found 9 separate manila folders containing copies of forged power of attorney documents, fabricated pay stubs, and printed bank statements for every controlled account. Carmen had kept paper backups of the entire scheme. The folders were labeled with the phantom clients' names, and they had the smoking gun, the single piece of evidence that made denial impossible. The data matching audit, run again with current data in late February of 2024 as the final pre-arrest verification, returned 33 phantom clients still active, all opened by Carmen, all routed to her accounts, none of whom appeared in any other government record in the state of Texas. The auditor's final report contained one sentence that the prosecutor would read aloud at sentencing. Quote, each of these individuals exists in only one place in the records of the state of Texas, and that place is a file opened by the defendant. End quote. We're heading into the arrest and the courtroom now. If you've made it this far, you already know this story is worse than the headline number suggested. $590,000 sounds like one big check. It wasn't. It was 4 years of grinding, methodical, small-dollar theft from a budget meant for the actual poor. If you want more cases like this one, subscribe and hit the bell. We don't look away from these stories. The morning of March 4, 2024, was a Monday. Carmen arrived at the Lansford County HHS field office at 7:48 a.m. 12 minutes earlier than her usual start time, carrying a thermos of coffee and a paper bag from the Panaderia on Travis Street. She nodded to the security officer at the front desk. She walked to her cubicle. She set down her thermos. She booted up her workstation. She did not see the 2 plainclothes investigators waiting in the small conference room off the main floor. At 8:14 a.m., her supervisor, a woman named Patricia Glenn, who had taken the job 16 months earlier and had no operational knowledge of the case, walked over to Carmen's cubicle and asked her to step into the conference room. Carmen would say later, in a statement to her defense attorney, that she thought it was about the new intake software rollout. Investigator Daniela Reyes from the State Auditor's Investigative Division was sitting at the conference table. Investigator Marcus Holderman was standing near the door. A third person, a Lansford County Sheriff's deputy in plain clothes, was sitting in a chair against the wall. Reyes spoke first. Reyes. Ms. Iglesias, my name is Daniela Reyes. I'm with the Texas State Auditor's Investigative Division. We need to talk to you about some files in your active caseload. Carmen. Okay. Reyes. Can you tell me about a client named Dolores Hinojos? Carmen paused. The pause was 11 seconds long. The body camera worn by Investigator Holderman captured her shoulders dropping a quarter inch and her right hand moving up to touch the cross at her neck. Carmen. I have a lot of clients. Reyes. You opened the Hinojos file on October 14, 2019. You've certified her for aid every quarter since then. The aid is being deposited into an account at First Heritage Bank that was opened in your name 10 days before her file was created. Can you help us understand that? Carmen. I think I should talk to a lawyer. Reyes. That's your right. I'm going to ask you a few more questions, and you can decline to answer any of them, but I need to read you something first. The Miranda warning followed. Carmen confirmed she understood. She did not invoke immediately. She sat at the table for another 6 minutes, answering nothing, looking at her hands, until Reyes laid down a printed copy of the controlled account spreadsheet, pulled from her work laptop. Carmen looked at it for a long moment. Carmen. I want a lawyer. She was arrested at 8:39 a.m. and walked out of the building in handcuffs through the same front entrance she had walked into 51 minutes earlier. The security officer who had nodded to her on the way in did not look up. The Lansford County District Attorney's Office filed an indictment on March 19, 2024, charging Carmen with theft of public funds over the aggregated value threshold, 14 counts of forgery of public records, 11 counts of identity theft, and 1 count of tampering with a governmental record. Lead prosecution was assigned to Assistant District Attorney Patrick Galvan, a 15-year veteran of the office. Carmen's defense was handled by Bennett Carrasco, a former public defender now in private practice, who had represented 2 other county employees in the previous decade. Carrasco filed 3 pretrial motions. He moved to suppress the digital forensics from Carmen's work laptop on the grounds that the search exceeded the scope of the warrant. The motion was denied on May 8th by the Honorable Adelina Quintanilla, who wrote that the warrant explicitly named all county-owned digital devices in Carmen's custody. He moved to sever the identity theft counts from the public funds counts. That motion was also denied. He moved for a change of venue, arguing local media coverage had prejudiced the jury pool. That motion was denied on June 11th. Trial began on August 5th, 2024, and ran 6 court days. The state called 19 witnesses. The defense called 4. The state's case opened with Marlene Tyndale walking the jury through the anomaly cluster from the spring 2023 audit. It closed with Daniela Reyes reading aloud, line by line, from the controlled account spreadsheet recovered from Carmen's work laptop, naming each phantom client and the total amount each had drawn from the county budget. The defense argued that the system itself was to blame, that an overworked, understaffed department had pushed Carmen past the breaking point, that the absence of oversight was the county's failure, not Carmen's, and that the prosecution was scapegoating a single caseworker for a systemic collapse. The jury did not buy it. They deliberated for 3 hours and 48 minutes on August 14th, returning guilty verdicts on every count except one of the identity theft charges, which was dismissed on a technicality regarding the use of a partially fabricated Social Security number not tied to a real living person. Sentencing took place on October 1st, 2024, in the Lansford County Courthouse. Carmen wore a gray pantsuit. Her husband sat in the second row. her mother sat beside him. Her 2 children were not in attendance, on advice of the defense. The victim impact statement was read by a woman named Adriana Ibarra, a 34-year-old single mother of 3 from a small, unincorporated community on the southwest edge of the county. Adriana had applied for emergency rental assistance through the same program Carmen had abused. Adriana's application had been denied in the summer of 2022 because the county had run out of allocated funds for the quarter. Adriana Ibarra. I lost my apartment in August of that year. We slept in my mother's living room for 9 months. My son missed 61 days of school. I read in the newspaper this spring how much money the defendant had taken from this same program. $590,000. The amount I needed to keep my apartment was $1,100. I want her to know that. I want her to know what $1,100 I never got would have done for my family. Judge Quintanilla took 12 minutes to deliver her sentencing statement. She addressed Carmen directly. Judge Quintanilla, you were entrusted with a very specific job. You were the human safeguard between the public's money and the people that money was meant to serve. The system gave you that trust because it had to. There were not enough resources to double-check every decision you made. You knew that. You used that. And over 4 years, you turned the safety net into a personal income stream. The crime is not just the theft. The crime is that for every phantom client you invented, there was a real one you could have helped and did not. This sentence reflects the deliberateness of what you did, the duration over which you did it, and the human cost that is impossible to quantify, but that we heard from this stand today. The sentence was 5 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, restitution of $590,000 payable to Lansford County, and a permanent bar from any future public employment in the state of Texas. Carmen was remanded to the Hilltop Unit, a women's facility in Gatesville, where she was processed on October 7, 2024. Mateo filed for legal separation in November, citing irreconcilable circumstances. The Camellia Street house was listed for sale in December. The proceeds, after the existing mortgage was paid off, were placed in an escrow account to be applied toward the restitution order. The Lansford County Department of Health and Human Services hired a new audit director in January of 2025 and implemented mandatory cross-database verification on every new file opening. The state legislature took up a bill in the spring session that would require a second caseworker signature on any aid certification over $300 per month. The bill had not yet passed at the time of this recording. 41 of Carmen's phantom files were formally closed and removed from the county's active caseload between March and June of 2024. The actual money, the $590,000, none of it has been recovered. The accounts had been substantially drained by the time the freeze orders went through, and what remained, approximately $42,000, was applied as a partial restitution payment in November of 2024. Carmen's earliest projected parole eligibility is March of 2027. Adriana Ibarra has not been back to the Lansford County HHS office. She declined to comment for any subsequent news coverage. The week after the sentencing, she returned to work at the same regional poultry processor where Mateo Iglesias had worked for 15 years. She did not know that. Mateo, by then, had already given his notice. That case was difficult to watch. The one on your screen right now is harder.